in the quaint village of Market Basing, a wealthy spinster, Miss Emily Arundell, pens a desperate letter to Hercule Poirot, fearing someone in her household is trying to kill her. When she dies in a suspicious fall, blamed on her dog's ball, Poirot uncovers a chilling web of greed and betrayal. A pristine ball, a loosened stair rod, poisoned tea, and a hidden will point to a cunning killer among her family and devoted companion. With his little gray cells, Poirot unravels the truth, proving even a silent dog can speak louder than lies. Will justice prevail in this deadly game of deception? Chapter 1. The letter from Little Green House. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished oak floor of Little Green House, a Georgian relic nestled in the heart of Market Basing. Miss Emily Arundell, a spinster of 72 with a spine as straight as the ancestral portraits lining her walls, sat at her mahogany writing desk. Her silver hair was pinned neatly, her eyes sharp despite the fine lines etched by time. The room smelled faintly of lavender and old books, a testament to her ordered life. Yet, today, her hands trembled not from age, but from a creeping dread that had taken root in her mind. She dipped her pen into the inkwell, pausing to glance at the window where the roses climbed in disciplined rows. Beyond, the village hummed, with its usual rhythm, the clatter of a cart, the distant bark of a dog. But within Little Green's walls, an unsettling quiet prevailed, broken only by the tick of the grandfather clock. Miss Arundel's lips tightened as she began to write, her script precise yet urgent, addressed to a name she had read in the papers, Monsieur Hercule Poirot, the Belgian detective whose reputation for unraveling the impossible had reached even this sleepy corner of England. My dear Monsieur she began, I am not a woman given to fancy, but I am convinced that someone in my household seeks my death. The words felt heavy, almost absurd, as she wrote them. She described the incidents that plagued her, a stair rod, inexplicably loosened, that had sent her tumbling one moonless night, saved only by her grip on the banister, a cup of tea, served by her companion, Miss Lawson, that tasted bitter and left her dizzy for hours, a heavy picture frame that fell from the wall, narrowly missing her as she sat by the fire. I am not mad, she wrote, underlining the word with a flourish, but I am afraid. Miss Emily Arundell leaned back, her heart pounding. She was a woman of means, her fortune built on her late father's investments, and Little Green House was her pride. Her family nephews, Charles and Teresa niece, Bella visited often, their laughter tinged with expectation. She had rewritten her will recently, favoring her companion, Miss Emily Lawson, a mousy woman with a penchant for spiritualism, who had served her loyally for years. Had that decision stirred resentment? Or was it Miss Lawson herself, whose nervous smiles seemed less sincere of late? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in, Miss Arundell called, slipping the letter beneath a blotter. Miss Lawson entered, her thin frame draped in a drab brown dress, her eyes darting as if startled by her own shadow. Your tea, Miss Arundell, she said, placing a tray on the desk. The cup steamed, its aroma mingling with the lavender. Miss Arundell studied her companion, noting the quick glance toward the desk, the slight tremor in her hands. Thank you, Emily, she said, her voice cool. That will be all. As Miss Lawson retreated, Miss Arundell lifted the cup but did not drink. She set it down, her gaze returning to the hidden letter. Should she send it? To accuse without proof risked ridicule, yet to ignore her instincts courted danger. She thought of Bob, her fox terrier, who now slept by the hearth, his loyalty unquestioned. If only humans were as transparent. With a sigh, she sealed the letter in an envelope, but hesitated to address it fully. Instead, she tucked it into the drawer, promising herself to decide tomorrow. The clock struck 5, and Little Green House settled into its evening hush, unaware that its mistress's fears would soon prove all too real. Chapter 2. The fall of Miss Arundell. The London morning was grey, with a drizzle that clung to the windows of Hercule Poirot's impeccably ordered flat at Whitehaven Mansions. The detective sat in his armchair, a cup of tisane steaming on the table beside him, his small, neat hands folded over a letter that had arrived in the post only an hour before. The envelope was creased, its postmark faded, as if it had lingered too long in some forgotten corner before reaching him. The handwriting was precise, feminine, and urgent, penned by one Miss Emily Arundell, of Little Green House, Market Basing. Poirot's dark eyes, sharp as a falcon's, scanned the lines again, his mustache twitching with the faint irritation of a man who sensed a puzzle arriving too late. "Mon ami," he called, his voice carrying the clipped precision of his Belgian. "Harriet." Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend and chronicler, looked up from the Times crossword, his pencil poised. "This letter, it is most curious. A woman writes to me of attempts on her life poison, a fall, a picture frame that falls too, conveniently, yet she is now dead. Comment: why does such a letter arrive only after her demise?" Hastings, ever the practical Englishman, set down his paper and adjusted his spectacles. "Dead, you say? Perhaps she was mistaken, Poirot. Old ladies can be fanciful, can't they? Imagining plots where there are none." Poirot's eyes gleamed with a spark of reproach. "Fanciful, Hastings? No, no. The mind of Hercule Poirot does not dismiss the fears of a woman who writes with such clarity. She speaks of a loosened stair-rod, a bitter tea, a heavy frame, details too specific for mere fancy. And yet, the coroner calls her death an accident. A fall down the stairs, c'est absurd. Why does she write to me, then die so conveniently? We must go to Market Basing at once." Hastings blinked, accustomed to Poirot's sudden enthusiasms, but never quite prepared for their urgency. "Market Basing, that's a bit of a trek, isn't it? What's so pressing about an old lady's accident?" Poirot rose, his compact frame radiating purpose. "The pressing matter, mon ami, is that this letter was written 2 months ago, but posted only last week. Someone delayed it deliberately, perhaps, and now Miss Arundell is no more. The little gray cells, they protest. We depart this afternoon. By early evening, the train from Paddington rattled through the English countryside, its rhythm a counterpoint to Poirot's restless thoughts. Hastings, lulled by the motion, dozed intermittently, while Poirot studied the letter once more. Miss Arundell's words were measured, almost clinical, yet beneath them lay a palpable fear. "I am not mad," she had written, underlining the word with a vehemence that spoke of defiance. She described a household of dependents' nephews, a niece, a companion each, with reason to covet her wealth. The stair-rod incident, she noted, occurred after a family gathering. The bitter tea followed a private moment with her companion, Miss Lawson. The picture frame, a heavy gilt monstrosity, had crashed inches from her head. "I am watched," she wrote, "and I am afraid." The train pulled into Market Basing as dusk settled over the village, painting the stone cottages in hues of lavender and gray. The George Inn, a sturdy establishment with ivy-clad walls, welcomed the travelers with the promise of warmth and gossip. Mrs. Jenkins, the innkeeper, a stout woman with a florid face, greeted them with a mixture of curiosity and deference. "You're that detective, aren't you?" she said, eyeing Poirot's impeccable suit and polished shoes. "Come about, Miss Arundell, I'll wager. Terrible business, her falling like that. Everyone's talking about it." Poirot inclined his head, his smile polite but non-committal. "You knew Mademoiselle Arundell, perhaps?" "Knew her? Bless you, everyone knew Miss Emily. Proper lady, she was. Kept Little Green House like a museum. Lived there with that companion of hers, Miss Lawson, and that dog, Bob. Oh, Bob's a character fox terrier, always chasing his ball. They say it was his ball that tripped her, poor soul." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A ball, you say? Most interesting. And what does the village say of her family? Mrs. Jenkins leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Well, there's Charles and Teresa, her nephew and niece, charming pair, but always after her money, if you ask me. Charles is a bit of a rogue, always in debt. Teresa's a modern sort, all lipstick and short skirts, engaged to that Dr. Donaldson, though he's a dull stick. Then there's Bellatanios, another niece, married to that foreign doctor, Jacob, Tanio's folks say. Miss Emily changed her will not long ago, left most everything to Miss Lawson, caused quite a stir, that did. Hastings, sensing a lead, interjected, changed her will. When was this? Mrs. Jenkins pursed her lips. Oh, a few months back, I reckon. Right before the accidents started, now I think of it, folks said. Miss Emily wasn't herself, getting frail, maybe losing her wits, but I saw her in church a week before she died, sharp as ever. Poirot filed this away, his mind already weaving patterns. And these accidents, madame, what does the village say of them? She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if the walls might overhear. Some say it was just bad luck. Others, well, they wonder. That stair rod was loose, and Miss Emily wasn't one for shoddy upkeep, and there was talk of her feeling poorly, dizzy spells, and such, after her tea. But the coroner said it was the fall that did it. Skull cracked, poor thing. Poirot thanked her with a bow, his mind alight with questions. A changed will, a series of mishaps, a delayed letter. Each piece was a thread in a tapestry, yet to be woven. He and Hastings retired to their rooms, but sleep eluded the detective. He sat by the window, the village lights flickering like stars, and murmured, "The little gray cells. They are restless, Hastings. This is no accident. It is a design." The next morning, Poirot and Hastings set out for Little Green House. A short walk through Market Basing's cobbled streets. The village was awake, its inhabitants nodding politely, but watching the strangers with keen interest. Little Green House stood at the edge of the village, its red brick facade imposing yet elegant, surrounded by manicured gardens, where roses bloomed with military precision. The air carried the scent of damp earth and honeysuckle, a stark contrast to the unease that clung to the house's reputation. At the door, they were met by Ellen, the maid, a sturdy woman in her 50s, with a face lined by years of service. Her eyes were red, as if from recent tears, but she held herself with the dignity of one who knew her place. "You're here about the mistress?" she asked, her voice low. "Miss Lawson's expecting you." The drawing-room was a study in faded grandeur, heavy velvet curtains, a walnut sideboard laden with silver, and a portrait of a stern-faced man, presumably Miss Arundell's father, glowering from above the fireplace. Miss Emily Lawson entered, a woman of indeterminate age, her thin frame swathed in a shapeless gray dress. Her eyes, magnified by thick spectacles, darted nervously, and her hands fluttered like startled birds. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice high and tremulous, "I read about you in the papers. I don't know why you're here, but I suppose it's about poor Miss Arundell." Poirot's smile was disarming, designed to put her at ease. "Indeed, mademoiselle, I received a letter from your late employer, expressing certain concerns. I wish to understand the circumstances of her death." Miss Lawson's hands twisted in her lap. "A letter? Oh dear, I had no idea. It was a terrible accident, you see. She fell down the stairs late at night. It was Bob, her terrier, left his ball on the landing. She must have tripped, the doctor said, her skull." Her voice broke, and she dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Poirot's gaze was steady, his tone gentle, but probing. "This ball, mademoiselle, it was found on the stairs." Yes, just where she fell. Ellen saw it when she found her. Poor Bob, he's been so quiet since." Hastings, standing by the window, noted the pristine condition of the room, every surface polished to a gleam. Seems odd, doesn't it, Poirot? A dog's ball causing such a tragedy. Was Miss Arundell unsteady on her feet? Miss Lawson shook her head vigorously. Oh no, she was spry for her age. Always up and down those stairs, checking the house, fussing over her roses. She wasn't one to stumble. Poirot moved to the staircase, a grand sweep of oak that curved toward the upper floors. The banister was smooth, the steps polished, but one stair rod, near the top, bore faint scratches, as if it had been tampered with. He crouched, his fingers tracing the metal, his eyes narrowing. This rod, it was loose, you say? Miss Lawson nodded, hovering behind him. Yes, it must have worked free. Old houses, you know, they settle. Poirot said nothing, but his mind was a whirl of calculations. A loose rod, a ball, a fall-all, too neat, too convenient. He turned to Ellen, who had lingered in the doorway. You found your mistress, madame? Ellen's hands clenched her apron. Yes, sir. Early morning it was. She was at the bottom of the stairs, all crumpled. I called Dr. Donaldson at once, but it was too late. Her head. She stopped, swallowing hard. And the ball, Poirot pressed. On the landing, sir, near the top step. Bright red. It was Bob's favorite. Poirot's mustache twitched. And where was this Bob during the night? In the garden shed, sir? Miss Arundell locked him there sometimes, to keep him from barking at foxes. Hastings raised an eyebrow. Locked in the shed. Then how did his ball get to the stairs? Miss Lawson interjected, her voice shrill. Oh, he must have left it earlier. Dogs are always dropping things. Poirot's smile was polite, but his eyes were cold. Indeed. Tell me, Mademoiselle Lawson, did your mistress speak of her fears? Of accidents, perhaps? Miss Lawson's cheeks flushed. Fears. Oh, she was a bit fanciful, toward the end. Talked of feeling poorly, dizzy spells. She thought her tea tasted odd once, but I told her it was just the new blend. She was getting on, you know. Poirot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The letter had mentioned the bitter tea, the loosened rod, the falling frame details Miss Lawson dismissed too readily. He requested to see Miss Arundell's study, where the letter had likely been written. The room was small, lined with books and papers, the desk cluttered with ledgers, and a silver inkstand. Poirot's fingers brushed the blotter, where a faint indentation suggested a letter had been written. He opened the drawer, finding nothing but stationery and a photograph of Bob, the terrier. His ears perked. As they left the study, Poirot paused by the fireplace, where a heavy gilt frame hung, slightly askew. This is the frame that fell? He asked Ellen. Yes, sir. A week or two before her death. Nearly hit her. It did. The nail must have worked loose. Poirot examined the wall, noting the nail's firmness, the plaster uncracked. Curio, he murmured. A nail does not loosen without assistance. Miss Lawson bristled. Assistance? Surely you don't think someone meant her harm? This is market-basing, Monsieur Poirot, not London. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Evil, mademoiselle, does not confine itself to cities. It finds a home, wherever greed or fear resides. They took their leave, promising to return, and walked back to the George Inn, under a sky heavy with clouds. Hastings, his hands in his pockets, ventured. Seems a straightforward accident, Poirot. Old lady, dark stairs, a dog's ball. Tragic, but not sinister. Poirot stopped, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Straightforward, Hastings. No, no. The ball is too convenient, the rod too loose, the letter too delayed, and this Bob, locked. In the shed, how does his ball appear on the stairs? Someone wishes us to believe in accidents, but Hercule Poirot is not so easily deceived. We must meet this family, the nephews, the niece, the doctor husband. One of them, or perhaps the devoted Miss Lawson, has woven a web, and I, Poirot, shall unravel it. Back at the inn, Poirot spread the letter on the table. its words a silent plea from a woman now silenced. Tomorrow, mon ami, we begin. The little gray cells, they are awake, and they will not rest until the truth is known. Chapter 3. The village of Market Basing. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over Market Basing, a village that seemed to drowse in a timeless hush, its stone cottages and winding lanes untouched by the clamor of modernity. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored suit and polished shoes, stepped out of the George Inn, his cane tapping a rhythm on the cobblestones. Beside him, Captain Arthur Hastings adjusted his hat, his face a mixture of curiosity and mild exasperation at Poirot's insistence on treating every detail as a clue. The air was crisp, scented with dew and the faint sweetness of blooming hawthorn, but Poirot's mind was far from the pastoral charm. The letter from Miss Emily Arundell, now a silent accusation from the grave, weighed heavily in his pocket. Really, Poirot, Hastings said, striding to keep pace, this place looks as peaceful as a vicar's tea party. Hard to imagine murder lurking in these lanes. Poirot's eyes, sharp as cut glass, flicked toward his friend. Peace, mon ami, is often the mask of secrets. In a village such as this, every smile hides a story, every whisper a suspicion. We must listen, observe, and unravel. Their destination was the heart of Market Basing, where the village green bustled with morning activity, a baker pushing his cart, a postman cycling past, a gaggle of women chatting by the pump. The Georgian had provided a hearty breakfast, but it was Mrs. Jenkins, the innkeeper, who had furnished the real Stina's gossip. Her tales of Little Green House and its inhabitants had painted a vivid picture. Miss Arundell, a formidable spinster of wealth and pride. Her companion, Miss Lawson, a nervous creature with a penchant for seances, and the family Charles, Teresa, and Belluch, tethered to their aunt's fortune by threads of expectation. The changed will, favoring Miss Lawson, had set tongues wagging, and Poirot intended to gather every murmur. They paused at the village post office, a squat building with a red-tiled roof, where Poirot hoped to trace the curious delay of Miss Arundell's letter. The postmistress, Miss Agnes Peabody, was a wiry woman with a face like a weathered map, her eyes bright with the vigilance of one who knew every letter that passed through her hands. She greeted Poirot with a nod, her curiosity piqued by the stranger's foreign accent and impeccable manners. "Good morning, madame," Poirot said, bowing slightly. "I am Hercule Poirot, and I inquire about a letter sent from Little Green House, addressed to me in London. It was written some 2 months ago, but posted only last week. This delay, it is most unusual, n'est-ce pas?" Miss Peabody's lips pursed, as if weighing whether to divulge village secrets to an outsider. A letter from Miss Arundell. Well, now that's odd. I remember it, though. Came in late. It did. Posted by Ellen, the maid, not Miss Arundell herself. I thought it strange, seeing as Miss Arundell was particular about her correspondence. Always brought her letters herself. She did. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. And this Ellen, she offered no explanation for the delay. Not a word, Miss Peabody said, leaning over the counter. Looked troubled, though. Said she found it in the mistress's desk after the funeral, and thought it ought to be sent. I didn't. Pry folks here don't take kindly to that, but I reckon she was shaken by Miss Arundell's death. Hastings interjected, his tone brisk. Sounds like an oversight. Old lady writes a letter, tucks it away, forgets to post it. Nothing sinister there. Poirot's smile was patient, but unyielding. An oversight, Hastings? A woman who fears for her life does not forget such a letter. No, someone kept it hidden, perhaps hoping it would never be found. We must speak to this Ellen. As they left the post office, Poirot's gaze swept the green, noting the villagers' glances, some curious, some guarded. Market Basing was a closed world, its secrets guarded by loyalty and suspicion. At the churchyard, they paused by the lich gate, where an elderly gardener, Mr. Purvis, clipped hedges with methodical snips. Poirot, ever adept at coaxing information, complimented the man's roses, drawing him into conversation. "You worked for Miss Arundell, perhaps?" Poirot asked, his tone casual. "Aye, now and then," Mr. Purvis replied, wiping his brow. "Kept her gardens tidy. Proper lady, Miss Emily. Didn't suffer fools, but fair, mind you." "Terrible, her going like that, falling down her own stairs." Poirot nodded sympathetically. "A tragedy, indeed. The village, it speaks of accidents, a stair rod, a picture frame, a bitter tea." "You heard such talk?" Mr. Purvis hesitated, his shears pausing. "Folks talk, sir. Miss Emily wasn't one to complain, but she mentioned feeling poorly once, after a cuppa. Thought it was her age, maybe, and that frame falling dod, that heavy thing, nailed solid. I fixed it myself years back, and her family." Poirot pressed. "They visited often." "Oh, Charles, he's a charmer, always after a loan. Teresa, she's a wild one, always rushing off to London. Bella Tanio's now, she's quieter, but that husband of hers, Dr. Tanio's bed of a temper, folks say. Miss Lawson, though, she was always there, fussing over Miss Emily. Too much, if you ask me." Poirot thanked the gardener, his mind cataloguing each detail. The picture frame, like the stair rod, suggested tampering. The bitter tea hinted at poison, and Miss Lawson's constant presence was a thread he could not ignore. They continued their walk, passing the village shop, where a cluster of women fell silent at their approach. One, a stout matron with a basket of apples, nodded stiffly. "That's Mrs. Carver," Hastings whispered. "Runs the shop. Knows everyone's business." Poirot approached, his charm disarming. "Madame Carver, a moment, if you please. I am Hercule Poirot, investigating the sad passing of Miss Arundell. You knew her well." Mrs. Carver's eyes narrowed, but she softened under Poirot's gaze. "Well enough. She shopped here regular, always paid prompt, not like some shame, her accident. Folks say it was that dog's ball, but I reckon there's more to it." "More?" Poirot's voice was soft, inviting confidence. She glanced around, lowering her voice. "Miss Emily wasn't herself last few months. Changed her will, left it all to that Lawson woman. Caused a right fuss with the family. Charles was livid, came in here ranting about it, and Bella, poor thing, looked like she'd been crying when she bought her tea last. And Miss Lawson," Poirot asked. "She was devoted, Nan." Mrs. Carver snorted. "Devoted? More like clinging, always hovering, reading those spirit books of hers. Miss Emily humored her, but I saw her roll her eyes once when Miss Lawson started on about ghosts." Hastings, sensing a pattern, murmured to Poirot, "Sounds like Miss Lawson stood to gain. The most that will business is suspicious." Poirot's nod was slight, his thoughts elsewhere. "We must see Little Green House again, Hastings, and speak to this Ellen. The village whispers, but the house holds the truth." They returned to the George Inn for luncheon, where Mrs. Jenkins served a hearty shepherd's pie, her chatter unabated. "Heard you were at the post office," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Folks are curious, Mr. Poirot. Some say Miss Emily was losing her wits, imagining things. Others reckon someone helped her along. That stair rod wasn't right, if you ask me." Poirot's fork paused. "And who, madame, might have wished her harm?" Mrs. Jenkins shrugged. "Take your pick. Charles, with his debts. Teresa, wanting her freedom. Bella's husband, Dr. Taniosi's a foreigner, you know, and folks don't trust him. Or Miss Lawson, playing the saint while counting her inheritance." As they finished their meal, Poirot's mind was a whirl of threads. The delayed letter, the tampered stair rod, the changed will. Each pointed to a design, but the designer remained elusive. He and Hastings set out again, this time to the local surgery, where Dr. Donaldson, Teresa's fiantrio's physician, might shed light on her health. Dr. Donaldson was a lean, serious man in his 30s, his office a model of clinical order. He greeted them with reserved courtesy, his eyes wary behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Monsieur Poirot, I presume. I heard you were asking questions. I'm afraid Miss Arundel's death was a simple accident, a fractured skull from the fall. I examined her myself." Poirot's smile was polite. "And her health, Monsieur le Docteur? She wrote of dizzy spells, a bitter tea. You observed such symptoms?" Dr. Donaldson frowned. "She mentioned feeling unwell once or twice, dizziness, nausea. I put it down to her age, perhaps indigestion. Her heart was sound, her mind sharp. I prescribed a tonic, nothing more, and poison." Poirot's tone was light, but his eyes were piercing. "You tested for such a thing?" The doctor stiffened. "Poison? There was no indication. The coroner's report was clear death by misadventure. Why do you ask?" Poirot waved a hand, as if dismissing the question. "A detective, monsieur, must consider all possibilities. You saw her the day she died." "No, the day before. She seemed in good spirits, planning to visit her solicitor. Something about her will, I believe." Poirot's mustache twitched again. "Her will, you say? Most interesting. And you, as Mademoiselle Teresa's fiancé, you knew of this change?" Dr. Donaldson's face reddened. "I heard rumors, nothing more. Teresa was upset, naturally, but we didn't discuss it. Miss Arundel's affairs were her own." They left the surgery, Hastings muttering, "He's hiding something, Poirot." That bit about the will, he looked nervous. "Perhaps, mon ami," Poirot replied, his eyes distant. "But it is the silences that speak loudest. Dr. Donaldson knows more than he says, yet I suspect he is not our villain. We must return to Little Green House. The maid, Ellen, holds a key, I think." As they approached Little Green House, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the lawn. Bob, the fox terrier, bounded from the garden, his red ball in his mouth, his tail a blur of joy. Poirot knelt, scratching the dog's ears, his mind racing. "You, little one, are a witness who cannot speak. But your ball, it tells a story, and Hercule Poirot will hear it." Inside, Ellen greeted them, her face drawn. "You're back, sir. Miss Lawson's out, at one of her spirit meetings. Can I help you?" Poirot's voice was gentle. "Madame Ellen, you posted the letter to me. Why did you wait?" Ellen's hands twisted in her apron. "I found it after she died, sir, tucked in her desk. I didn't know what to do at first. It seemed private. But when they said it was an accident, I couldn't rest. She was frightened, sir, those last weeks. Kept saying someone was watching her and the ball." Poirot asked. "You are certain it was on the stairs?" "Yes, sir. But Bob was in the shed that night. I locked him in myself, on Miss Emily's orders. He couldn't have left it there." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Merci, madame, you have been most helpful." As they walked back to the inn, the village settling into twilight, Poirot murmured, "The ball is a lie, Hastings. Someone placed it to blame the dog, and the letter, hidden until Ellen's conscience prevailed. Tomorrow, we meet the family. The web tightens, mon ami, and soon we shall see the spider." Chapter 4. The household at Little Greenth morning air in Market Basing carried a chill, despite the sun's valiant effort to pierce the mist that clung to the village like a shroud. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned to the chin and his cane tapping a precise rhythm, led the way to Little Green House, with Captain Arthur Hastings trailing behind, his breath visible in the crisp dawn. The red brick facade of the house loomed ahead, its windows glinting like watchful eyes. Poirot's mind, ever active, churned over the threads of the case, the delayed letter, the tampered stair rod, the pristine dog's ball, and the whispers of a will that had shifted fortunes. Today, he intended to probe the heart of Little Green's household, where secrets festered beneath polished surfaces. "Poirot," Hastings ventured, his voice tinged with skepticism, "you're making a mountain out of a molehill, a loose rod, a misplaced ball. Surely, it's just bad luck. Old houses are full of quirks." Poirot's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, flicked toward his friend. "Quirks, mon ami. No. The quirks of Little Green House are not accidents, but arrows, pointing to a purpose. Someone wished Mademoiselle Arundell dead, and we shall find them among those who shared her roof." They were admitted by Ellen, the maid, whose sturdy frame and worn apron bespoke years of quiet service. Her eyes, still shadowed with grief, softened at the sight of Poirot. "Miss Lawson's in the drawing room, sir," she said, her voice low. "She's been out of sorts since your last visit. Keeps muttering about spirits and such." Poirot nodded, his mustache curving slightly. "And the dog, Bob? He is about, in the garden, sir, chasing his tail. Poor thing misses the mistress." The drawing room was, as Poirot remembered, a cavern of faded elegance, with heavy drapes, a gleaming sideboard, and the stern portrait of Miss Arundell's father, glowering from the mantel. Miss Emily Lawson sat by the fire, her thin hands clutching a book of spiritualist tracts, her spectacles slipping down her nose. She rose at their entrance, her movements jerky, like a marionette with tangled strings. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice high and quavering. "I didn't expect you back so soon. Is there news?" Poirot's smile was disarming, designed to soothe her nerves. "No news, mademoiselle, only questions. I wish to understand the household as it was before Mademoiselle Arundell's tragic fall. You were her constant companion, n'est-ce pas?" Miss Lawson's eyes darted to the window, where Bob could be seen bounding across the lawn. "Yes, I was with her nearly every day. Dear Miss Emily was so kind, taking me in after my own people passed. I managed the house, saw to her needs. She was particular, but fair." Hastings, standing by the sideboard, noted the nervous flutter of her hands. "Sounds like quite a responsibility, Miss Lawson. Must have been a shock. Her accident." Her lips trembled. "A shock. Oh, it was dreadful. I heard the crash that night, middle of the night. It was. I ran out and found her." She paused, pressing her handkerchief to her mouth. "Ellen fetched Dr. Donaldson, but it was too late. That wretched ball of Bob's, left on the stairs. I should have checked. I should have." Poirot raised a hand, his tone gentle but firm. "The ball, mademoiselle. Let us speak of it. You saw it on the landing. Yes, just where she fell. Bright red, unmistakable. Bob's always dropping it somewhere." Poirot moved to the staircase, his steps deliberate. The oak stairs gleamed under the morning light, each step polished to a mirror shine. He crouched near the top, where the fatal fall had occurred, his fingers tracing the stair rod. The scratches he had noted before were faint but undeniable, as if a tool had pried the rod loose. "This rod," he said, his voice soft. "It was loose before the fall, you say?" Miss Lawson hovered behind him, wringing her hands. "Oh, I suppose it must have been. Old houses, you know, they're full of little faults." Ellen noticed it after, when she swept up. Poirot's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, filing the detail away. He descended the stairs, pausing at the bottom where Miss Arundell's body had been found. A rug lay there, its edges frayed, but no trace of blood or struggle remained. "And Bob?" he asked, turning to Ellen, who had lingered in the hall. "He was in the shed that night." Ellen nodded, her face grim. "Yes, sir." Miss Emily locked him there herself. Said he was barking too much at night. I let him out come morning, after I found her." Hastings frowned, glancing at Poirot. If the dog was locked up, how did his ball get to the stairs? Seems a bit convenient, don't you think? Miss Lawson's cheeks flushed. Convenient? Oh, Captain Hastings, you don't think someone meant for her to fall? It was an accident, surely. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Surely, mademoiselle, but let us explore all possibilities. Tell me, you were close to Mademoiselle Arundell. Did she speak of her fears, of incidents? Miss Lawson's eyes widened behind her spectacles. Fears. Well, she was a bit fanciful toward the end. Complained of dizziness once or twice, said her tea tasted off. I told her it was just the new leaves I'd bought stronger than she was used to. And that picture frame falling. It shook her, but I said it was just the nail working loose. Poirot's gaze drifted to the fireplace, where the gilt frame hung, its nail as firm as ever. Most interesting, he murmured. And her family. They visited often. Oh yes, Miss Lawson said, her voice warming with a hint of gossip. Charles and Teresa came regularly, though I think it was the money they wanted. Charles is charming, but always in debt. Miss Emily bailed him out more than once. Teresa's a modern girl, always flitting about with that Dr. Donaldson. And Bella, poor Bella, she'd come with her husband, Dr. Tanios. He's a bit forceful, if you know what I mean. Poirot's mustache twitched. Forceful? In what way, mademoiselle? Miss Lawson hesitated, her fingers twisting the handkerchief. Oh, just his manner. Very opinionated, always talking about his medicines, and such. Miss Emily didn't care for him much. Said he was too clever by half. Ellen, who had been silent, spoke up, her voice steady. The mistress didn't trust him, sir, nor Charles, not after he asked for a loan last Easter. She'd argue with them, then lock herself in her study, writing letters or sorting her papers. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Letters, you say? Did you see what she wrote? Ellen shook her head. No, sir, she was private about that. But I found one after she died, in her desk. Addressed to you, it was. I posted it, thinking it was what she'd have wanted. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The letter, hidden until Elon's conscience prevailed, was a key, but its contents were incomplete. Miss Arundell had written of her tampering, with her TA pronoun that pointed to a woman. Miss Lawson, perhaps, or Bella. He requested to see the study again, hoping for further clues. The study was, as he remembered, a small, orderly room with shelves of leather-bound books, a desk cluttered with ledgers, and a silver inkstand gleaming in the light. Poirot's fingers brushed the blotter where the faint imprint of Miss Arundell's letter lingered. He opened the drawer, finding only stationery and a photograph of Bob. His ears perked as if listening, but a closer inspection revealed a scrap of paper caught in the drawer's edge, its edge torn. Poirot unfolded it carefully, revealing a fragment in Miss Arundell's precise script. I saw her. The bottle. The rest was gone, ripped away. Hastings peered over his shoulder. What's that, Poirot? A note. A clue, mon ami Poirot said softly. She saw someone, and a bottle is mentioned. The bitter tea, perhaps. We must be vigilant. Miss Lawson, hovering nearby, caught sight of the paper and gasped Arquia system. The response was cut off. Due to a character limit or other issue. Below is the continuation, completing the artifact and ensuring the response is fully provided while adhering to the instructions. Ped. Oh heavens, what's that? You shouldn't be touching her things, Poirot. Expression remained serene as he pocketed the scrap, his voice calm. A mere oversight, mademoiselle. Tell me, did Mademoiselle Arundell keep bottles in her study? Medicines, perhaps? Bottles? Miss Lawson's voice rose an octave. No, just ink and such. She wasn't one for tonics, except what Dr. Donaldson gave her. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging the detail. The bottle, the bitter tea, the nervous companion. Each piece tightened the web, He turned to Ellen. Madame, you have been most kind. One final question. Did Mademoiselle Arundell ever speak of a bottle, perhaps one she found suspicious? Ellen's brow furrowed. Not to me, sir, but she was particular about her tea. Always took it plain, no sugar, said once it tasted wrong. But I thought she was just tired. As they left the study, Poirot's eyes lingered on the staircase, the scene of the fatal fall. The scratches on the stair rod, the pristine ball, the locked shed all pointed to a staged accident. But the bottle, mentioned in the torn note, suggested a deeper plot. Poison, perhaps, administered slowly to weaken the old lady before the final push. Outside, the mist had lifted, and Bob bounded toward them, dropping his ball at Poirot's feet. The detective knelt, patting the terrier's head. You, little one, are innocent, n'est-ce pas? But your ball, it has been used as a pawn. Hastings, watching from the garden path, sighed. Poirot, you're reading too much into this. A ball, a loose rod, a dizzy spell, it's tragic, but not murder. Poirot rose, his eyes gleaming. Tragic, yes. But murder, mon ami, is a chameleon, hiding in plain sight. The letter, the note, the bottle, they are not accidents. Someone in this household played a deadly game, and we shall meet the players soon. As they walked back to the George Inn, the village stirring to life around them, Poirot's mind was a whirl of connections. Miss Lawson's nervous demeanor, Ellen's delayed posting of the letter, the family's greed, the mysterious bottle, all threads in a tapestry of deceit. Tomorrow, he would confront the Arundell kin, whose motives lay bare in the shadow of a changed will. For now, he murmured to Hastings, the household of Little Green Mon Ami is a stage, and each actor plays a part. But Hercule Poirot shall reveal the villain behind the curtain. Chapter 5. The family's secrets. The sun hung low over Market Basing, painting the village in hues of amber and rose, as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings set out to unravel the tangled threads of Miss Emily Arundell's family. The cobblestone streets echoed with the clatter of a milk cart and the laughter of children, but Poirot's mind was fixed on the Arundell kinchgirls, Teresa and Belich, a potential player in the deadly drama of Little Green House. The letter, the torn note, the staged ball, all pointed to a deliberate act, and Poirot suspected the motives lay in the family's hunger for their aunt's fortune. His cane tapped a steady rhythm, a counterpoint to his racing thoughts. As he and Hastings made their way to the first of their appointments, Poirot, Hastings said, his voice tinged with impatience. You're chasing shadows, a loose stare, rod, and a dog's ball. Don't make a murder. These people are grieving, not scheming. Poirot's dark eyes glinted with quiet resolve. Grief, mon ami, can be a mask for guilt. The will changed to favor Mademoiselle Lawson has stirred. Resentment. Resentment breeds motive, and motive breeds murder. We shall see what secrets these Arundells hide. Their first stop was the modest cottage of Charles Arundell, a short walk from the village green. The house, with its sagging roof and peeling paint, betrayed its occupants' financial straits. Charles greeted them at the door, a handsome man in his early 30s, his smile as polished as his patent leather shoes. His eyes, however, held a restless flicker, like a gambler awaiting the turn of a card. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, he said, ushering them into a cramped parlor, cluttered with racing forms and empty cigarette packets. I've heard of you, of course. Come about Aunt Emily, I suppose. Ghastly business, her fall. Poirot settled into a worn armchair, his posture impeccable. Indeed, monsieur. I received a letter from your aunt, expressing fears for her life. Accidents. She wrote most suspicious accidents. You were close to her, n'est-ce pas? Charles lit a cigarette, his movements casual, but his fingers betraying a slight tremor. Close. Well, as close as one can be to a dragon like Aunt Emily. She was fond of me, in her waybled me out of a few scrapes, you know, debts and such. but she was sharp, always knew when I was after something. Hastings, standing by the window, noted the pile of unpaid bills on the table. Must have been a blow. Then, when she changed her will, left it all to Miss Lawson, I hear. Charles's smile faltered, a shadow crossing his face. A blow, that's putting it mildly. I won't lie, expected a tidy sum. We all did. But Aunt Emily was stubborn. Got it into her head that Lawson needed looking after. Silly, really she was just a glorified housekeeper. Poirot's mustache twitched. And these accidents, did your aunt speak of them to you? A loosened stair rod, a bitter tea, a falling picture frame. Charles exhaled a plume of smoke, his eyes narrowing. She mentioned feeling off once or twice dizzy, she said, thought it was her age. The stair rod business, I heard about after. Blamed that dog, Bob, clumsy beast, always leaving his ball about. And you were at Little Green House often? Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. Often enough, Charles admitted. Last time was Easter. Asked her for a loan, didn't go down well. She gave me a lecture about responsibility, then shooed me out. Next I heard, she was dead. His voice was light, but his fingers crushed the cigarette stub with unnecessary force. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And this will... Monsieur, did you discuss it with your sisters? Charles shrugged. Teresa was furious, called it a betrayal. Bella was quieter, but you could see it hit her hard. Her husband, Tenios, was livid, muttering about legal action. But what could we do? Aunt Emily's word was law. They took their leave, Charles's charm lingering like a veneer over his unease, as they walked toward Teresa's lodging up. Stylish flat above the village shop. Hastings murmured, "He's a slippery one, poor debts up to his ears, and that will change." Must have stung. Indeed, Poirot replied, his eyes distant. But is he cunning enough to stage a murder, or is he merely a man who gambles and loses? We shall see. Teresa Arundell was a stark contrast to her brother. She greeted them in a cloud of perfume, her bobbed hair and scarlet lipstick marking her as a woman of the modern age. Her flat was a riot of color-soaked cushions, Art Deco lamps, and a gramophone playing a jazzy tune. She lounged on a chaise, a cigarette holder dangling from her fingers, her eyes appraising Poirot with a mix of amusement and wariness. "Monsieur Poirot," she drawled, "you're stirring up the village, aren't you? What's this about? Aunt Emily's death. Surely you don't think it was anything but an accident?" Poirot's smile was polite, his hands folded neatly. "An accident, mademoiselle, perhaps. But your aunt wrote to me of fierce incidents that troubled her. A fall, a strange taste in her tea. You visited her often, I understand. Did she share these concerns?" Teresa's cigarette paused mid-air, her lips parting slightly. Aunt Emily. She was always fussing about something: her health, the house, that wretched dog. She did say once her tea tasted odd, but I thought she was imagining things. She was getting on, you know. Hastings, seated stiffly on a velvet chair, pressed further, and the will. "You must have been upset when she left everything to Miss Lawson." Teresa's eyes flashed, her composure slipping. "Upset? I was livid. We're her family, not that mousy companion. Aunt Emily said it was to teach us a lesson, she called it. As if Charles or I needed her preaching. But murder? That's absurd." Her voice was sharp, but her fingers trembled, betraying a crack in her bravado. "And your fiancé's, Dr. Donaldson?" Poirot asked. "He attended your aunt? Did he notice signs of distress, Rex?" Teresa's tone softened, though her eyes remained guarded. "He said she was fit for her age, just a bit frail. He prescribed a tonic, nothing serious. You'd have to ask him." Poirot noted the tremor in her hand, the quick glance toward the door. "And where were you, mademoiselle, the night of her fall?" Teresa's laugh was brittle. "In London, at a party. Ask anyone. I didn't come down until I heard she was." Dead. Her eyes met Poirot's, daring him to challenge her. They left the flat, the gramophone's tune fading behind them. Hastings shook his head. She's a cool customer, Poirot, but that temper sheet didn't like being cut out of the will. True, Poirot murmured, but her alibi, it must be checked. And her fiancé, the good doctor, knows more than he has shared. Now, to Bella. The Tanioses lived in a rented house on the village's edge, its garden overgrown and its shutters askew. Bella Tanios opened the door, a slight woman with tired eyes and a faded dress, her mousy hair pulled into a tight bun. Her husband, Dr. Jacob Tanios, loomed behind her, a broad-shouldered man with a swarthy complexion and a brusque manner. Monsieur Poirot, Bella said, her voice barely above a whisper. We heard you were asking questions about Aunt Emily. Poirot bowed, his eyes gentle but probing. Indeed, Madame, your aunt wrote to me, fearing for her life. Accidents, she said, a stare rod, a bitter tea. You were close to her, yes. Bella's hands twisted in her apron, her glance flickering. To her husband. Close. I tried to be. Aunt Emily was kind, promised me a share of her estate. But then she changed her will, left it all to Miss Lawson. I didn't understand. Dr. Tanios's voice cut in, sharp and accented. It was an outrage. My wife deserved better. That Lawson woman wormed her way in, playing the devoted servant. Emily was old, easily swayed. Poirot's gaze shifted to the doctor, noting the clenched fists, the flare of nostrils. And you, monsieur, you are a physician. Did Mademoiselle Arundell consult you about her health? Tanios's eyes narrowed. She didn't trust me, thought. My methods too modern. I offered to examine her, but she refused. Said Dr. Donaldson was enough. And these accidents? Poirot asked. Did she speak of them to you? Bella hesitated, her voice trembling. Once, she said she felt dizzy after tea. I thought it was nothing, just age. But she was nervous, kept looking at Miss Lawson oddly. Tanios snorted. Nervous. She was senile, imagining things. That fall was her own fault, stumbling in the dark. Poirot's smile was polite, but his eyes were cold. Perhaps, monsieur. And where were you both, the night of her fall? Here, Tanios said quickly. At home, with the children. Bella was exhausted, weren't you, dear? Bella nodded, her eyes downcast. Yes, we were here. As they left, Hastings whispered, that Tanios fellow's a bully, Poirot, and Bella's scared of him. Did you see how she flinched? Oui, mon ami, Poirot replied, his voice low. She is a woman under strain, but is it fear of her husband? Or guilt for her aunt? And the doctor, his temper is a storm, but is it a murderer's rage? We must dig deeper. Back at the George Inn, Poirot spread his notes on the table, the torn scrap from the study. I saw her. The bottle at the center. Charles's debts, Teresa's temper, Bella's timidity, Tanios's volatility. Each had motive, yet none fit the cunning of the staged ball, or the hidden letter. The family, Hastings, Poirot murmured. They circle the fortune like moths to a flame. But the hand that struck was precise, patient. Tomorrow, we return to Little Green. The dumb witness, Bob, may yet speak. Chapter 6. The dog that did not bark. The morning mist hung low over Market Basing, veiling the village in a gossamer shroud that softened the edges of its stone cottages and ancient oaks. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the damp, walked with purpose toward Little Green House, his cane striking the path with a metronome's precision. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever his shadow, matched his stride, though his face betrayed a growing skepticism. The threads of the casta, delayed letter, the tampered stair rod, the torn note about a bottle wove a complex tapestry in Poirot's mind. But one figure stood out, Bob, the fox terrier, whose red ball had been cast as the villain in Miss Emily Arundell's fatal fall. Today, Poirot intended to test the dog's silent testimony. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice cutting through the mist, "you recall the great Sherlock Holmes and his curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. The dog that did not bark. It was significant. So, too, is our Bob. His ball is blamed, yet he was locked away. Why, mon ami, does a dog not bark at an intruder?" Hastings adjusted his hat, his brow furrowed. "You're making too much of this, Poirot. Dogs leave toys about. Someone tripped over it, that's all. You're seeing plots where there's just bad luck." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Bad luck, Hastings. No, no, luck does not place a ball on a stair in a house where its owner is locked in a shed. The little gray cells, they protest such coincidence. We shall see what Bob reveals." Little greenhouse emerged from the mist, its red brick facade, stern and unyielding, like a sentinel guarding its secrets. The garden, still damp with dew, bore the marks of Bob's playful bounds, his paw prints etched in the soft earth. Ellen, the maid, opened the door, her face weary but welcoming. "Back again, sir?" she said, her voice tinged with curiosity. "Miss Lawson's in the parlor, but she's in a state keeps, talking about spirits warning her." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Spirits, madame? Most interesting. But first, I wish to see the little Bob. He is in the garden." "Aye, sir. Chasing his ball as always." Ellen led them through the hall, where the grand staircase loomed, its polished steps a silent witness to the tragedy. Poirot paused, his fingers brushing the banister, noting again the faint scratches on the stair rod. The marks were subtle, but to his trained eye, they whispered of a tool's touch, a screwdriver, perhaps wielded with intent, in the garden. Bob bounded toward them, his fox terrier energy undimmed by his mistress's absence. His red ball, bright as a cherry, lay at his feet, unmarred by tooth marks or wear. Poirot knelt, patting the dog's head, his eyes fixed on the ball. "Bonjour, petit ami," he murmured. "You are a witness most mute, but your silence speaks volumes." He lifted the ball, turning it in his gloved hands. It was pristine, its surface smooth, as if it had never been chewed or tossed. Hastings frowned, crouching beside him. "Looks like any dog's ball. Poirot, what's so special about it?" Poirot's voice was low, almost a whisper. "What is special, Hastings, is its condition. A dog's ball, much loved, should bear the marks of play scratches, dents, the wear of teeth. This one is new, untouched. Yet Ellen says it is Bob's favorite. Why, then, does it look as if it has never been used?" Ellen, hovering nearby, caught his words. "That's the one, sir. Found it on the landing, right where Miss Emily fell. I thought it odd. Two Bobs usually got it all chewed up." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you are certain, madame, that Bob was in the shed that night?" "Certain as I'm standing here," Ellen replied, her hands firm on her hips. "I locked him in myself, on Miss Emily's orders." "He'd been barking at the moon," she said. "I didn't let him out till morning, after I found her." Poirot rose, pocketing the ball with a nod. "Merci, madame. You have confirmed a suspicion. The ball was placed, not dropped, a stage prop in a deadly play." They entered the parlor, where Miss Emily Lawson sat by a low fire, her thin frame hunched over a cup of tea. Her spectacles glinted in the dim light, and her hands trembled as she set the cup down. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice quivering, "you're unsettling the house with your questions. Poor Miss Emily's gone surely. It was just an accident." Poirot settled into a chair, his posture impeccable, his gaze steady. "An accident, mademoiselle? Perhaps. But your mistress wrote to me of fierce incidents that were no mere mishaps. A loosened stair rod, a bitter tea, a falling frame, and this ball, blamed for her fall. Yet the dog was locked away. You were here that night, yes, Miss Lawson? Fingers twisted her handkerchief, her eyes darting to the window. Yes, I was asleep upstairs. I heard the crash show. It was awful. I ran down and found her, crumpled at the bottom of the stairs. Ellen fetched the doctor, but it was no use. And the ball? Poirot asked, producing it from his pocket. You saw it on the landing. Her cheeks flushed, her voice rising. Yes, it was there. Bob must have left it earlier. He's always scampering about. Poirot leaned forward, his tone gentle but probing. But Bob, mademoiselle, was in the shed, locked in, as Ellen confirms. How then does his ball appear on the stairs at the precise moment of tragedy? Miss Lawson's eyes widened, her breath catching. I don't know. Perhaps he dropped it during the day. I was so upset, I didn't think. Hastings, leaning against the mantel, interjected, Seems a bit convenient, Miss Lawson. That ball being there just when she fell, and those dizzy spells she mentioned. Any idea what caused them? Miss Lawson's hands fluttered. Dizzy spells. Oh, she was getting on, you know. Complained of feeling poorly once or twice, said her tea tasted bitter. I told her it was the new Blendasam, stronger than her usual. She didn't mention it again. Poirot's mustache twitched, his mind seizing on the word bitter. The torn note I saw her. The bottle echoed in his thoughts. And medicines, mademoiselle, did she take any? Only what Dr. Donaldson prescribed, Miss Lawson said quickly. A tonic for her strength. I gave it to her myself, measured it out carefully. Poirot's eyes gleamed. You administered it, most devoted, mademoiselle? And where was this tonic kept? In the kitchen cupboard, she replied, her voice faltering. Locked, of course. Miss Emily was particular about such things. Poirot rose, his movements deliberate. May we see this cupboard, mademoiselle? Miss Lawson led them to the kitchen, a cavernous room with a flagged floor and copper pans gleaming on the walls. The cupboard, a sturdy oak affair, was indeed locked, but Ellen produced the key with a glance at Poirot. Inside, among jars of preserves and packets of tea, stood a small brown bottle labeled tonic for Miss Arundell. Poirot lifted it, noting its half-empty state, the liquid inside a murky amber. He sniffed it cautiously, his nose wrinkling, at a faint, acrid scent. Most interesting, he murmured. This tonic, it was given regularly. Every evening, Miss Lawson said, her voice tight. Dr. Donaldson's orders. Poirot pocketed the bottle, ignoring her gasp. With your permission, mademoiselle, I shall have this analyzed. A precaution, nothing more. As they left the kitchen, Poirot's mind was a whirl of connections. The pristine ball, the locked shed, the bitter tea, the bottle all pointed to a calculated act. Miss Lawson's nervous demeanor, her quick explanations, raised suspicions, but her fear seemed genuine. Was she a culprit or a pawn? Outside, Bob raced across the lawn, his energy a stark contrast to the house's gloom. Poirot watched him, his thoughts turning to the night of the fall. Hastings, he said, consider this. Bob, locked in the shed, could not place the ball. Someone else did, to create the illusion of an accident. And the bitter tea, the dizzy spells, perhaps a slow poison, to weaken her before the fall. Hastings frowned, his hands in his pockets. Poison, that's a leap. Poirot, and who? Miss Lawson? She seems too jittery to pull off something so cunning. Jittery? Yes, Poirot replied, but fear can mask guile. Or perhaps another. Hand Charles with his debts. Teresa, with her temper. Bella, under her husband's sway. We must test the tonic, mon ami. The truth lies in its contents. They returned to the George Inn, where Poirot arranged to send the bottle to a London chemist for analysis. As they sat over tea, Mrs. Jenkins, the innkeeper, hovered, her eyes bright with gossip. Heard you were poking about Little Green again, she said, wiping her hands on her apron. Folks are talking, Mr. Poirot. Some say Miss not right in the head, with her spirit nonsense. Others reckon the family's to blame, Charles especially, always after money. That one, Poirot, sipped his tea, his expression bland. And the village, Madame, what does it say of these accidents? Mrs. Jenkins leaned closer. Some call it bad luck, but I heard Miss Emily was scared, toward the end. Told the vicar she felt watched, and that ballade, it being so clean, Bob's usually got it in tatters. Poirot's eyes gleamed. You are observant, Madame? Tell me, did you ever see a bottle a strange one, perhaps in Miss Arundel's possession? Mrs. Jenkins frowned. Can't say I did. But Miss Lawson was always fussing with medicines, measuring out that tonic. Bit too eager, if you ask me. As she bustled away, Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. The dog that did not bark, Hastings, is our guide. Bob's silence in the shed, his pristine baldies are not accidents. Someone in Little Green House played a deadly game, and the bottle holds the key. Tomorrow, we pursue the chemists, report and confront the family again. The little gray cells, they are close to the truth. Chapter 7. The Spiritualist's Deception. The afternoon light filtered through the heavy velvet curtains of Little Green House, casting a somber glow over the parlor, where Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings awaited their next encounter. The air was thick with the scent of beeswax and lavender, but an undercurrent of unease lingered, as if the house itself held its breath. Poirot, seated in a high-backed chair, his hands folded neatly over his cane, studied the room with the precision of a watchmaker. The polished sideboard, the stern portrait of Miss Arundel's father. The faint scratches on the stair rod beyond the door-all were pieces in the puzzle of her death. The pristine red ball, the locked shed, the bitter tea, and the mysterious bottles sent for analysis weighed heavily on his mind. Today, he sought to probe deeper into the heart of the household, where Miss Emily Lawson's nervous piety and penchant for spiritualism hinted at secrets, yet unveiled. Hastings, pacing by the window, broke the silence. Poirot, this spiritualism business of Miss Lawson's, it's all nonsense, isn't it? Seances, spirits, she's daft, surely. Can't see her plotting anything as clever as murder. Poirot's dark eyes gleamed, his mustache twitching, faintly. Nonsense, mon ami. Perhaps, but the belief in spirits can be a mask for motives, most earthly. Mademoiselle Lawson's nerves, her devotion, they conceal something, I think. We shall see what her séance reveals. A soft knock announced Miss Lawson's arrival, her thin frame swathed in a drab shawl, her spectacles glinting with the firelight. Her hands fluttered like moths, betraying her agitation. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, she said, her voice high and tremulous. I'm so glad you've come. I've been feeling, quite unsettled. The spirits, you see, they're restless, since Miss Emily's passing. I thought, perhaps you'd join us tonight, for a séance, to seek her guidance. Poirot's smile was polite, his tone measured. A séance, mademoiselle? Most intriguing? You believe Mademoiselle Arundel's spirit lingers? Miss Lawson's eyes widened, her hands clasping her shawl. Oh yes. I've felt her presence, her voice, guiding me. She was so wise, so strong. I thought it might comfort poor Bella too. She's been so low since the funeral. Hastings stifled a snort, but Poirot's expression remained serene. And who will join this gathering, mademoiselle? Just a few friends, Miss Lawson replied, her voice quickening. Mrs. Carver, from the shop, Mr. Purvis, the gardener, and Bella. Of course. Dr. Tanios refused, says it's all folly, but Bella's eager. She wants to know Aunt Emily's wishes. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. A séance offered a stage for deception, a chance to observe Miss Lawson's motives and Bella's fears. We shall attend, mademoiselle. It will be illuminating. The day passed in quiet investigation. Poirot revisited the staircase, noting again the scratched stair rod, its subtle tampering, a silent accusation. He questioned Ellen further, who confirmed Miss Arundel's growing unease in her final weeks. She'd lock her bedroom door at night, sir, Ellen said, her voice low, said she felt watched, and that tea she stopped drinking it, poured it into the ferns when Miss Lawson wasn't looking. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The ferns, madame? They suffered, perhaps. Ellen nodded. Wilted, they did. I thought it was the heat, but now I wonder. As evening fell, Little Green House took on a spectral air, its shadows deepening in the candlelight. The parlor had been rearranged, a round table draped in black cloth at its center, surrounded by chairs. Miss Lawson, her face pale, bustled about, arranging candles and a small crystal ball, her movements betraying a nervous excitement. Mrs. Carver, stout and skeptical, arrived with Mr. Purvis, whose weathered hands fidgeted with his cap. Bellatanios slipped in quietly, her eyes red-rimmed, her hands twisting a worn handkerchief. Poirot and Hastings took their seats, the detective's gaze sweeping the room. The curtains were drawn, the only light from the flickering candles, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Miss Lawson, at the head of the table, clasped hands with Bella and Mrs. Carver, her voice rising in a tremulous chant. Spirits of the departed, we seek your guidance. Miss Emily, are you with us? The room fell silent, save for the crackle of the fire. Poirot's eyes, sharp behind his calm facade, noted every detail. Bella's trembling fingers, Mrs. Carver's pursed lips, Mr. Purvis's uneasy glance toward the door. Miss Lawson's head tilted back, her eyes closed, as a low moan escaped her lips. She's here, she whispered. I feel her. Hastings, seated beside Poirot, shifted uncomfortably, his skepticism warring with the room's oppressive atmosphere. Suddenly, a voice faint, quavering, and unmistakably feminine echoed from the darkness. Betrayal, danger, Bella, beware. Bella gasped, her hand jerking in Miss Lawson's grip. Aunt Emily, is that you? The voice grew stronger, its tone accusing. You took from me, Bella. You wanted my wealth. The spirits see all. Bella's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. No, I loved you. I didn't. Poirot's hand shot out, seizing a candle and raising it high. The light caught Miss Lawson's face, her lips moving subtly, the source of the ghostly voice. Enough, mademoiselle, he said, his tone sharp. The spirits, they are most cooperative, are they not? Miss Lawson's eyes flew open, her cheeks flushing scarlet. I was only channeling her. The spirits speak through me. Mrs. Carver snorted, breaking the circle. Channeling, my foot. That was you, Emily Lawson, plain as day. Trying to scare poor Bella, are you? Bella sobbed, her hands covering her face. I didn't do anything. Why would Aunt Emily say that? Poirot rose, his presence commanding, despite his small stature. Madame Tanios, be at ease. This was no spirit, but a performance. Mademoiselle Lawson, why do you accuse Madame Tanios? To deflect suspicion, perhaps. Miss Lawson's hands fluttered, her voice shrill. Deflect? I only wanted to help. Bella's been so distressed. I thought the spirits might guide her. I didn't mean. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. You meant to sow doubt, mademoiselle. 2-point fingers at Madame Tanios, who stood to lose much by the changed will. But the spirits, they do not speak of bottles or bitter tea, do they, miss? Lawson gasped, her spectacles slipping down her nose. Bottles. I don't know what you mean. Hastings, catching Poirot's drift, leaned forward. Come now, Miss Lawson. You were quick to dismiss Miss Arundel's complaints about her tea, and that tonic you gave Hercule, having it tested. What'll we find, eh? Miss Lawson's face drained of color, her hands clutching the table. Tested? Oh, heavens. It was just a tonic. Dr. Donaldson prescribed it. Poirot's smile was cold. We shall see, mademoiselle. But your séance, it reveals more than you intended. A guilty conscience, perhaps, seeks to blame another. The gathering dissolved, Mrs. Carver and Mr. Purvis departing with murmured excuses, Bella retreating to compose herself. Poirot and Hastings lingered, the detective's eyes scanning the parlor. He approached the table, lifting a candle to examine the underside, where a small mirror was tucked, angled to catch the light and create a flickering effect. Clever, he murmured. A trick to enhance the mystique. Mademoiselle Lawson is not without guile. Outside, as they walked back to the Georgian, the village was cloaked in twilight, the stars emerging like pinpricks in the sky. Hastings shook his head. That was a farce, Poirot. She's unhinged, playing at ghosts, to scare Bella. But murder, she's too flustered for that. Poirot's voice was low, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Flustered, yes, but cunning, mon ami. The séance was no mere folly, it was a diversion, to cast suspicion on Bella. Why? To protect herself, perhaps, or another. The bottle, the tea, the ball, these are not the work of a fool. We await the chemist's report, and then we shall confront Mademoiselle Lawson again. At the inn, a telegram awaited. Its contents brief, but electrifying. The tonic contained traces of arsenic. Not enough to kill outright, but sufficient to cause dizziness and weakness over time. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he read it, his fingers tapping the paper. The little gray cells, they were correct. A slow poison to weaken Mademoiselle Arundell, followed by the staged fall. The net tightens. Hastings. Tomorrow, we search Miss Lawson's room. The spiritualist, she has played her hand, and Hercule Poirot shall call her bluff. Chapter 8. The poisoned cup. The dawn broke over Market Basing with a tentative light, as if reluctant to illuminate the secrets buried within Little Green House. Hercule Poirot, his mind a whirl of connections, stood at the window of the George Inn, his tisane untouched on the table beside him. The telegram from the London chemist, confirming traces of arsenic in Miss Arundell's tonic, lay folded in his pocket, its words a silent indictment. The pristine ball, the tampered stair rod, the torn note about a bottle, and now the poison, all pointed to a calculated plot. Captain Arthur Hastings, rousing himself from a restless sleep, joined Poirot, his face creased with concern. Arsenic, Poirot, Hastings said, rubbing his eyes. That's serious business. But who? Miss Lawson, with her seances and nerves, or one of the family, sneaking it into the tonic? Poirot's dark eyes gleamed, his mustache twitching faintly. Who, mon ami? That is the question. The arsenic was administered slowly, to weaken, not to kill outright. The fall was the final act, staged with the dog's ball to mask the truth. We must return to Little Green House, and search for the source of this poison. The village was stirring as they set out, the cobblestones slick with morning dew. Little Green House loomed ahead, its red brick facade stern under the pale sky. Ellen, the maid, greeted them at the door, her expression a mix of wariness and wariness. "You're early, sir," she said, her hand smoothing her apron. "Miss Lawson's still abed, after last night's carry-on with that séance." Poirot's smile was disarming. "We shall not disturb her yet, madame. I wish to speak with Dr. Donaldson, who prescribed the tonic. He is in the village." "Yes. Aye, at the surgery," Ellen replied. "But he'll be at the inquest this afternoon. Coroner's reviewing Miss Emily's death again, on account of your questions." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "An inquest? Most interesting. We shall attend. But first, a word with the good doctor." The surgery, a neat building near the village green, smelled of antiseptic and old wood. Dr. Rex Donaldson, Teresa Arundel's fiancé, greeted them with reserved courtesy, his lean frame and wire-rimmed glasses giving him the air of a scholar rather than a conspirator. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice clipped, "I heard about the arsenic. Shocking, if true. But I assure you, my tonic was harmless vitamins and iron, nothing more. Poirot's gaze was steady, his tone mild but probing. Indeed, Monsieur le Docteur. Yet the chemist found arsenic in the bottle from Little Green House. You prescribed it, yes. Donaldson's jaw tightened, his fingers adjusting his glasses. I did. A standard tonic, dispensed from my stock. If there was arsenic, it wasn't from me. Someone must have tampered with it after it left my hands. Hastings, leaning against the doorframe, interjected, tampered? That's a bold claim, Doctor. Who had access to it at Little Green? Donaldson hesitated, his eyes flickering. Miss Lawson administered it, under my instructions. Ellen, the maid, had access to the kitchen, and the family Charles Teresa. Ballet visited often. Any of them could have. He trailed off, his face paling. Poirot's mustache twitched. Any of them, you say? And you, monsieur, you saw Mademoiselle Arundell the day before her death. She spoke of her will, I believe. Donaldson nodded, his voice low. She mentioned wanting to see her solicitor, to make changes. I didn't. She was private about such matters. But she seemed agitated, kept glancing at the door as if expecting someone. Poirot filed this away, his mind racing. And her health. She complained of dizziness, a bitter taste in her tea. She did, Donaldson admitted. I examined her pulse normal, no signs of serious illness. I thought it was fatigue, perhaps indigestion. I never suspected poison. They left the surgery, Poirot's silence a storm of thought. He is defensive, Hastings, but truthful, I think. The arsenic was not his doing. The bottle was tampered with at Little Green, by someone with access and motive. The inquest, held in the village hall, was a somber affair, the room packed with locals whispering behind their hands. The coroner, a doorman with a walrus mustache, reviewed the evidence. Miss Arundel's fall, the loose stair rod, the red ball found on the landing. Dr. Donaldson testified to her good health, save for occasional dizziness, which he attributed to age. Ellen recounted finding her mistress at the foot of the stairs, the ball nearby. Miss Lawson, her voice quivering, repeated her tale of the midnight crash and Bob's supposed carelessness. Poirot, seated at the back with Hastings, listened intently, his eyes scanning the room. Charles Arundell lounged in a corner, his charm masking a restless unease. Teresa, her lipstick a defiant slash of red, sat beside Dr. Donaldson, her eyes darting to the door. Bella Tanios, pale and subdued, clung to her husband's arm, while Dr. Tanios' scowl suggested irritation at the proceedings. The coroner's verdict was unchanged. Death by misadventure, the fall caused by tripping over the ball, but Poirot's expression was one of quiet dissent. As the crowd dispersed, Poirot approached Ellen, who lingered by the hall's entrance. Madame, he said softly, you spoke of the ferns wilting, where Mademoiselle Arundell poured her tea. May I see them? Ellen led them back to Little Green House, to a conservatory where ferns drooped in their pots, their fronds yellowed and limp. Poirot examined them, noting a faint powdery residue on the soil. This tea, he murmured, it was more than Sam. We shall send a sample of this soil to the chemist, Hastings. The arsenic, it leaves its mark. Miss Lawson, joining them, gasped at the sight of Poirot, scraping soil into a small envelope. What are you doing? Those are Miss Emily's ferns. Poirot's smile was polite, but firm. A precaution, mademoiselle. Your mistress suspected her tea was tampered with. The ferns, they confirm her fears. Miss Lawson's hands fluttered, her spectacles slipping. Tampered? Oh no, that's impossible. I made the tea myself. Always so careful. Careful, yes, Poirot said, his tone sharp. Yet the tonic you administered contained arsenic, and the note we found, I saw her. The bottle suggests Mademoiselle Arundell saw someone tampering. Who, mademoiselle, did she see? Miss Lawson's face crumpled, her voice a wail. I don't know, I swear. I only gave her what the doctor ordered. She was confused, imagining things. Hastings, his patience thinning, pressed. "Come now, Miss Lawson. You had the most to gain from her death, a whole estate, wasn't it? And that seance, accusing Bella, was that to throw us off?" Miss Lawson sank into a chair, sobbing. "I didn't mean to accuse Bella. I just thought, the spirits, they guide me. I wanted to help." Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind was unrelenting. "Help, mademoiselle, or hide. We shall see what the chemist says of the ferns. For now, I ask you to remain at Little Green. The truth, it is close." As they left, the village settling into dusk, Hastings shook his head. "She's either a brilliant actress or a complete fool, Poirot. But arsenic, that's no accident. Someone meant to kill her slowly, then finished the job with the fall." Poirot nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Oui, mon ami. The poisoned cup, the staged ball, the loosened rod, they form a pattern. Miss Lawson is the key, but whether she is villain or pawn, I am not yet certain. The family, too, must be watched. Tomorrow, we search her room. The little gray cells, they sense a revelation." Back at the inn, Poirot drafted a letter to the chemist, enclosing the fern soil for analysis. As he sealed it, his thoughts returned to the torn note, "I saw her," and the bottle of tonic. The hand that poisoned the cup was cunning, patient, and close to Miss Arundell. The net was tightening, and Hercule Poirot would not rest until it closed around the guilty. Chapter 9. The motive unraveled. The morning sun pierced the lingering mist over Market Basing, casting a pale glow on Little Green House, where secrets seemed to seep from its very walls. Hercule Poirot, his mind a crucible of deduction, stood in the George Inn's dining room, a fresh telegram from the London chemist in his hand. The analysis of the fern soil confirmed his suspicions. Traces of arsenic, matching the tonic's composition, had poisoned the plants where Miss Emily Arundell had poured her suspect tea. The torn note, "I saw her," the bottle, the pristine dog's ball, the tampered stair rod, and now the poisoned ferns wove a tapestry of deliberate murder. Captain Arthur Hastings, sipping tea at the table, watched Poirot with a mix of admiration and exasperation. "Arsenic in the ferns, Poirot," Hastings said, setting down his cup. "That clinches it. Someone was poisoning her. But who? Miss Lawson's the obvious suspect, with that will in her favor, but she's such a nervous wreck. Could she really pull it off?" Poirot's dark eyes gleamed, his mustache twitching with purpose. "Nervous, yes, mon ami, but nerves can mask cunning. The seance, the quick explanations, the pristine ball all suggest a mind that plans, even if it trembles. Today, we search her room and gather the household. The truth, it is near, and Hercule Poirot shall lay it bare." They set out for Little Green House, the village stirring with its usual rhythm, the clink of milk bottles, the chatter of women at the pump. Ellen greeted them at the door, her face drawn, her hands twisting her apron. "Miss Lawson's in a state, sir," she whispered. "Heard about the inquest and your questions. She's been pacing all morning." Poirot's smile was reassuring. "We shall be gentle, madame, but first, I must see Mademoiselle Lawson's room, a small matter, to clarify details." Ellen hesitated, then nodded, leading them upstairs to a modest bedroom at the end of the corridor. The room was Spartan, its only adornments a narrow bed, a wardrobe, and a small table cluttered with spiritualist pamphlets and a dog-eared Bible. Poirot's eyes swept the space, his gloved hands deft as he opened drawers and lifted books. Under the mattress, tucked in a folded shawl, he found a small glass vial, its label faded but legible, arsenic for external use only. A faint residue clung to its interior, its scent acrid. Hastings whistled softly. "Good Lord, Poirot, that's the smoking gun, isn't it?" Poirot's expression was grim. "A gun, perhaps, but not yet fired. The fingerprints, They will tell us more. We shall send this to the police chemist, but first, we confront the household. Ellen, watching from the doorway, gasped, "Arsenic." "Oh, sir, not Miss Lawson. She was devoted to the mistress." "Devotion," Madame Poirot said softly, "can be a mask for greed. We shall see." He arranged for the household to gather in the drawing room that afternoon. A summons that brought Charles and Teresa, Arundell, Bella, and Dr. Jacob Tanios, and Miss Lawson under one roof. The air was thick with tension as they assembled, the grand staircase looming beyond the open door like a silent accuser. Charles lounged in an armchair, his charm tinged with unease. Teresa, her lipstick a defiant slash, sat stiffly beside Dr. Donaldson, who had joined at Poirot's request. Bella clung to her husband's arm, her eyes darting nervously, while Tanios's scowl deepened. Miss Lawson, her spectacles slipping, fluttered near the fire, her hands clutching a handkerchief. Poirot stood at the center, his small stature belied by the authority in his voice. "Madame et messieurs," he began, his eyes sweeping the room, "we are here to unravel the truth of Mademoiselle Emily Arundell's death. It was no accident, but a murder, planned with care and executed with cruelty." A collective gasp rose, broken by Charles's sharp laugh. "Murder? Come now, Poirot, that's a bit dramatic." "Aunt Emily tripped over Bob's ball, didn't she?" Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "The ball, monsieur, was a lie. Bob was locked in the shed that night, as Ellen confirms. The ball, pristine and unchewed, was placed on the landing to stage an accident. But the true weapon was poison arsenic, found in the tonic Mademoiselle Arundell took, and in the ferns where she poured her bitter tea." Teresa's cigarette holder trembled, her voice sharp. "Poison? That's absurd. Aunt Emily was old. Frail she imagined things." Bella's hands twisted, her voice a whisper. "Arsenic? Oh no, not Aunt Emily." Dr. Tanios's face darkened. "This is nonsense. If there was poison, it wasn't from us. That Lawson woman, she was always hovering, mixing medicines." Miss Lawson's sob broke the silence, her face crumpling. "Me. I loved her. I'd never harm her." Poirot raised a hand, his tone calm but commanding. "Silence, please. Let us consider the facts. Mademoiselle Arundell wrote to me, fearing for her life. She spoke of a loosened stair rod, a bitter tea, a falling frame. The stair rod bore scratches, as if pried loose. The tea, poured into ferns, contained arsenic, as did the tonic. And a note, found in her study, read, 'I saw her, the bottle.' She saw someone tampering, and that someone was close to her." He turned to Miss Lawson, his eyes piercing. "Mademoiselle, you administered the tonic, locked in the kitchen cupboard. You made her tea, which she found bitter, and today, in your room, I found a vial of arsenic, hidden beneath your mattress." Miss Lawson's cry was shrill, her hands flailing. "No, that's not mine. I swear, I never." Charles leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Arsenic. Good God, Lawson, what were you playing at?" Teresa's laugh was brittle. "She wanted the house, didn't she? That will everything to her. She's been playing the saint all along." Bella's voice trembled. "Miss Lawson, how could you? Aunt Emily trusted you." Dr. Tanios's fist slammed the armrest. "I knew it. She's a schemer, worming her way into the will." Poirot's voice cut through the uproar. "Enough. Mademoiselle Lawson, you staged the seance. To accuse Madame Tanios, to divert suspicion. But the arsenic, the ball, the stair rod, they point to you. You weakened Mademoiselle Arundell with poison, then loosened the rod to ensure her fall. The ball was your final touch, to blame the innocent Bob." Miss Lawson collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "No, no, I didn't. I loved her. The vial, I found it, I hid it. I was afraid. I thought Bella or Charles." Poirot's gaze softened, but his resolve was iron. You thought to protect yourself, mademoiselle, but the evidence speaks. The fingerprints on the vial, they will confirm your touch. The note I saw her was your undoing. Mademoiselle Arundell saw you with the bottle, and you could not risk her exposing you. Hastings, his jaw set, murmured, "Good Lord, Poirot, she's been playing us all along. But why the séance? Why accuse Bella?" Poirot turned to the room, his voice steady. The séance was a desperate act, to shift blame to Madame Tanios, whose poverty made her a plausible culprit. But the family, they were innocent of this crime. Monsieur Charles, your debts drove. You two beg, not to kill. Mademoiselle Teresa, your temper flared, but your alibi holds. Madame Tanios, you suffered under your husband's will, but you did not act. Monsieur Tanios, your temper is loud, but your medicines were harmless. Only Mademoiselle Lawson had the opportunity, the motive, and the means. Miss Lawson's sobs grew frantic. I didn't mean to. I only wanted. Little green house, she promised it to me. I gave her years of service. But she was going to change the will again. I heard her tell Dr. Donaldson. I couldn't lose it all. Poirot's eyes were grave. So you poisoned her slowly, with arsenic from the vial, to weaken her. The stair rod, you loosened it, and the ball, you placed it. A perfect accident, Nesty P.A. But the letter, hidden by Elon's loyalty, and the ferns, they betrayed you. Charles rose, his face pale. You wretched woman. Aunt Emily trusted you. Teresa's eyes blazed. You killed her for a house. You're despicable. Bella wept silently, her husband's arm around her, his anger subdued by shock. Dr. Donaldson stood, his voice quiet. I should have seen it, the dizziness, the nausea. I failed her. Poirot raised a hand. You are not to blame, monsieur. The poison was subtle, the plan cunning. But Hercule Poirot sees what others miss. He turned to Ellen, who stood by the door, her face a mask of sorrow. Madame, call the police. Mademoiselle Lawson must answer for her crimes. As Ellen hurried out, Miss Lawson's sobs filled the room, a keening lament for her shattered dreams. Poirot's gaze softened, but his resolve held firm. The motive, mise Amos, was greed, cloaked in devotion. The little gray cells, they have unraveled the truth. Hastings, his voice low, said, You've done it again, Poirot. But poor Miss Arundell, she deserved better. Indeed, Poirot murmured. But justice, it is served. And Bob, the dumb witness, has spoken. Chapter 10. The Confession. The twilight draped market basing, in a soft veil. The village's lamps flickering like hesitant stars, as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur. Hastings stood in the drawing room of Little Green House. The air was heavy with the aftermath of revelation, the echoes of Miss Emily Lawson's sobs still lingering in the oak-paneled space. The household, Charles and Teresa Arundell, Bella and Dr. Jacob Tanios, and Dr. Rex Donaldson remained seated, their faces a tableau of shock, anger, and grief. The arsenic vial, the poisoned ferns, the tampered stair rod, and the pristine dog's ball had all pointed to Miss Lawson, whose carefully woven facade of devotion had unraveled under Poirot's relentless scrutiny. Now, as Ellen returned with the village constable, a burly man named Sergeant Hargreaves. The final act of the drama was at hand. Poirot stood at the center, his small stature commanding despite the room's grandeur, his eyes, sharp as polished obsidian, fixed on Miss Lawson, who sat crumpled in her chair, her spectacles fogged with tears, her hands clutching a sodden handkerchief. Mademoiselle Lawson, he said, his voice steady but laced with a quiet sorrow, you have heard the evidence? The arsenic in the tonic, the poisoned ferns, the note I saw her. The bottle, all accuse you. The time for denial is past. Speak, and let the truth cleanse your conscience. Miss Lawson's head jerked up, her eyes wild behind her spectacles. I didn't mean to kill her, she wailed, her voice breaking. the room's tense silence. I wanted Little Green House, my security. She promised it to me, years of service, and then she was going to change it all. Charles Arundell, his charm replaced by a cold fury, leaned forward. You poisoned her for a house, you miserable creature. Teresa's voice was sharp, her cigarette holder forgotten in her hand. You betrayed her trust, played the loyal companion, while slipping arsenic into her tea. Bella Tanios, her face pale, whispered, "How could you?" Aunt Emily was kind. To you. Dr. Tanios' scowl softened into disbelief, his hand resting on Bella's shoulder. You schemed while we struggled, thinking us the greedy ones. Despicable. Dr. Donaldson, his scholarly demeanor shaken, said quietly, "I should have seen the signs, her dizziness, her weakness. I failed as her doctor." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the accusations. "Enough, Mies Amos. The guilt is clear, but the confession, it must be complete. Mademoiselle Lawson, tell us how you did it, and why." Miss Lawson's sobs subsided into a trembling narrative, her voice halting but clear. "It started months ago. Miss Emily changed her will, left everything to me. She said I'd earned it, looking after her all those years. But then, at Easter, she quarreled with Charles and Bella, said they were after her money. She told me she'd see her solicitor, rewrite the will to favor them again. I couldn't bear it. Little Green was my future, my only chance." She paused, her hands twisting the handkerchief. I found the arsenic in the garden shed, left from years ago, for pests. I thought, just a little, to make her ill, to keep her from changing the will. I put it in her tonic, a pinch at a time, so she'd feel weak, confused. She noticed the bitter taste in her tea once, poured it out when I wasn't looking. I didn't know about the ferns." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the stair rod, mademoiselle? The ball?" Miss Lawson's voice dropped to a whisper. "The tonic wasn't working fast enough. She was still planning to see the solicitor. So I loosened the stair rod, just a bit, with a screwdriver. That night, I waited till she was asleep, then placed Bob's ball on the landing. I'd bought a new one, so it looked right. I locked Bob in the shed myself, so he couldn't be blamed for wandering, I thought. A fall, an accident, no one would suspect." Hastings, his jaw tight, murmured, "Good God, Poirot." She planned it down to the last detail. Miss Lawson's tears flowed anew. "I didn't want her to suffer. I just wanted the house, my security. But the letter, I didn't know about it. She must have written it that last week, hidden it in her desk. When Ellen posted it, I was terrified, but I thought the seance might make Bella look guilty, with her needing money so badly." Poirot's voice was grave. "The seance, mademoiselle, was your error. It revealed your fear, your need to deflect suspicion. And the note, I saw her, you were the her Mademoiselle Arundell saw, tampering with the tonic bottle in the kitchen." Miss Lawson nodded, her face crumpling. "She caught me once, late at night, checking the bottle. I said I was cleaning, but she looked at me so strangely. I knew then she suspected, but I couldn't stop. I was in too deep." Sergeant Hargreaves, who had listened in stunned silence, stepped forward, his notebook open. "Miss Lawson, you'll have to come with me. This is a matter for the police now." She rose, trembling, as Ellen helped her into a shawl, her sobs muffled. The family watched in silence, their anger tempered by the weight of her confession. Charles shook his head, muttering all for a house. Teresa's eyes were cold, her lips pressed tight. Bella wept quietly, her husband's arm around her. Dr. Donaldson stood, his face etched with regret. Poirot turned to the sergeant, his tone formal. "The vial of arsenic, found in her room, bears her fingerprints, I am certain. The chemist's report on the tonic and ferns confirms the poison. The evidence, it is complete." As Miss Lawson was led away, her footsteps echoing in the hall, Poirot addressed the family. Madame, et messieurs, justice is served, but it brings no joy. Mademoiselle Arundel's trust was betrayed, her life stolen by one she sheltered. Yet her wisdom, it lives on, in the letter that reached me, in the ferns that bore witness. Hastings, his voice low, said, "You saw it all, Poirot. The ball, the poison, the note. How did you know?" Poirot's eyes softened, a rare melancholy in their depths. The little gray cells, mon ami, they see the patterns others miss. The dog that did not bark, the ball that was too perfect, the tea that poisoned the ferns, these were the cries of truth, and I listened. The family dispersed, Charles and Teresa murmuring plans to consult the solicitor. Bella and Tanios retreating to their strained home, Dr. Donaldson lingering to offer apologies to Poirot. Little greenhouse fell silent, its secrets laid bare. Outside, Bob the terrier bounded across the lawn, his tail wagging, oblivious to the tragedy he had helped unravel. As Poirot and Hastings walked back to the George Inn, the village cloaked in dusk, Hastings sighed. A sad business, Poirot. She seemed so harmless, that Lawson woman, harmless, Hastings. Poirot's voice was soft, his gaze distant. The heart, it can hide a storm beneath a calm exterior. Greed, fear, desperation, they drive even the meek to murder. But the truth, it always finds a way. At the inn, Poirot penned a letter to the police, enclosing the vial and the chemist's reports, ensuring the case was airtight. As he sealed it, his thoughts lingered on Miss Arundell, a woman whose sharp mind had seen her doom but could not outrun it. "Rest, mademoiselle," he murmured. "Your dumb witness has spoken, and justice is yours." Chapter 11. The legacy restored. The morning sun bathed Market Basing in a gentle glow, its rays filtering through the ancient elms that lined the village green, casting dappled shadows on the cobblestones. Little Green House stood quiet, its red brick facade no longer a sentinel of secrets but a monument to a tragedy resolved. Hercule Poirot, his suit immaculate and his cane gleaming, stood in the drawing room where the air felt lighter, as if the house itself exhaled after Miss Emily confession. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated by the fire, nursed a cup of tea, his face a mix of relief and melancholy. The arsenic vial, the poisoned ferns, the tampered stair rod, and the staged ball had all led to Miss Lawson's arrest, but the case was not yet closed. A final thread, the matter of Miss Arundel's will, remained to be unraveled. "Poirot," Hastings said, setting down his cup, "you've done it again. Miss Lawson's behind bars, and the truth's out. But what now? The family's still reeling, and that will, leaving everything to that wretched woman, must be a bitter pill." Poirot's dark eyes gleamed, his mustache curving slightly. "The will, mon ami, is the final piece of the puzzle. Mademoiselle Arundell was a woman of principle, and I suspect she left more than one testament to her wishes. We must search her study once more. The little gray cells, they whisper of a document hidden, waiting to restore justice." Ellen, the maid, entered with a tray of biscuits, her face less drawn than before, as if the truth had lifted a weight from her shoulders. "You're back, sir," she said, her voice steady. "The house feels empty without the mistress, but it's right what you've done, finding her killer." Poirot bowed slightly, his tone gentle. "Mercy, madame. Your loyalty to Mademoiselle Arundell has been her salvation. Tell me, did she ever speak of a second will, perhaps kept in a safe place?" Ellen's brow furrowed, her hands pausing on it. The tray, a second will. She did see her solicitor, Mr. Purvis, a week or so before she died. Locked herself in the study afterward, writing and sorting papers. I didn't pry, but she seemed determined. Poirot's eyes sparkled. "Determined, you say? Most interesting. May we examine the study again?" Ellen led them to the small, orderly room. its shelves lined with leather-bound books, and its desk still bearing the faint imprint of Miss Arundel's final letter. Poirot's gloved hands moved with precision, opening drawers and tapping panels. Behind a row of ledgers, he found a hidden compartment in the desk, its lock subtle, but not beyond his skill. With a hairpin borrowed from Ellen and a deft twist, the compartment sprang open, revealing a sealed envelope marked Last Will and Testament of Emily Arundell, revised. Hastings's eyes widened. Good Lord, Poirot, another will. What's it say? Poirot opened the envelope with care, his eyes scanning the document. It is dated 1 week before her death, he said, his voice low. Mademoiselle Arundell revoked her previous will, restoring her estate to her family, Charles, Teresa, and Belle in equal shares, with a small bequest to Ellen for her service. Little Green House is to remain a family home, not the prize of Mademoiselle Lawson. Ellen's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes misting. Oh, sir, that's like her. She was cross with them sometimes, but they were her kin. She'd never leave them with nothing. Poirot nodded, his expression grave. She suspected Mademoiselle Lawson, I think, after seeing her with the bottle. This will, hidden away, was her insurance against treachery. We shall deliver it to Mr. Purvis, the solicitor, at once. They set out for the solicitor's office, a tidy building near the church, where Mr. Purvis, a bespectacled man with a penchant for precision, received them with cautious curiosity. Monsieur Poirot, he said, adjusting his glasses, I heard about Miss Lawson's arrest. Shocking business. And now you've found another will. Indeed, Poirot replied, presenting the envelope. Mademoiselle Arundell revised her intentions, restoring her estate to her family. I trust you will verify its authenticity and execute her wishes. Mr. Purvis examined the document, his fingers tracing the signature. It's genuine, no doubt. Her handwriting, her seal. She came to me that week, said she wanted to make things right. I prepared this, but she insisted on keeping it herself, said she'd store it safely. I never imagined. Poirot's mustache twitched. She was a woman of foresight, monsieur. Her suspicions saved her legacy, if not her life. The solicitor promised to act swiftly, notifying the family and nullifying the earlier will that favored Miss Lawson. As Poirot and Hastings left, the village was alive with gossip, the news of Miss Lawson's confession spreading like wildfire. At the George Inn, Mrs. Jenkins, the innkeeper, greeted them with a knowing nod. Heard you found the truth, Mr. Poirot. That Lawson woman fancy her poisoning poor Miss Emily. And now a new will, they say. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The village, madame, is well informed. The will restores Mademoiselle Arundel's family, as she intended. Mrs. Jenkins leaned closer, her voice a whisper. Good on you, sir. Charles and Teresa, they'll be pleased, though Bella's the one who needs it most, with that husband of hers. Back at Little Green, Poirot gathered the family once more, this time with Mr. Purvis present, to explain the new will. Charles, his charm restored, clapped his hands. Well done, Poirot. Aunt Emily came through, after all, a third of the estate more than I hoped for, after everything. Teresa, her eyes softer, nodded. She was tough, but fair. I should have trusted her judgment. Bella, tears brimming, clutched her husband's hand. This means so much, Monsieur Poirot. The children, they'll have a future now. Dr. Tenios's temper subdued, murmured, she was a good woman. We misjudged her. Dr. Donaldson, standing apart, offered a quiet apology. I should have questioned the tonic, Monsieur Poirot. Your insight saved us from a grave injustice. Poirot waved a hand, his tone humble but firm. The credit, monsieur, belongs to Mademoiselle Arundell and her loyal Ellen, who posted the letter that brought me here, and to Bob, the dumb witness, whose silence spoke louder than words. As the family dispersed, their relief palpable, Bob bounded into the room, his tail wagging furiously. He dropped his well-chewed ball at Poirot's feet, as if in gratitude. Hastings chuckled, bending to pat the terrier. "You're right, Poirot. This little chop's the real hero. Ought to have a medal." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A medal, mon ami. No, a bone will suffice." But his innocence, it was the key that unlocked the truth. They stepped into the garden, where the roses bloomed in disciplined rows, a testament to Miss Arundel's care. Poirot paused, his gaze lingering on Little Green House. "A house restored, a family redeemed," he murmured. "Mademoiselle Arundel's legacy endures, despite the shadow of betrayal." Hastings, his mood lifting, clapped Poirot's shoulder. "You've outdone yourself, old man. But what now? Back to London for a rest?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A rest, Hastings? Perhaps. But the little grey cells, they are never still. There are always secrets, waiting to be uncovered." As they walked back to the inn, the village settling into evening, the weight of the case lifted, leaving only the quiet satisfaction of justice served. Little Green House stood behind them, its windows glowing softly, a beacon of order restored by the unerring mind of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 12. The return to London. The late afternoon sun cast a golden sheen over Market Basing, softening the edges of its ancient cottages and bathing the village green in a warm, forgiving light. Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings stood outside the Georgian, their bags packed, ready to board the train back to London. The case of Miss Emily Arundel's murder had been resolved. Miss Emily Lawson's confession had laid bare her scheme of arsenic and staged accidents. The hidden will had restored the family's inheritance, and Little Green House stood once more as a testament to justice served. Yet, as Poirot adjusted his hat and tapped his cane on the cobblestones, a faint melancholy lingered in his eyes, as if the weight of human frailty pressed upon him still. Hastings, ever the optimist, clapped his hands together, his breath visible in the cooling air. "Well, Poirot, that's another feather in your cap. You've sorted out the mess, exposed the villain, and set the family right. Quite a tidy ending, if you ask me." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile breaking through his somber mood. "Tidy, mon ami, perhaps, but the heart of man, it is never tidy. Greed, fear, betrayal, they weave a tangled web, and even Hercule Poirot cannot erase the sorrow they leave behind." They walked toward the station, the village bustling with its usual rhythm, the clatter of a cart, the laughter of children, the distant bark of a dog, perhaps Bob, the fox terrier, chasing his well-worn ball across Little Green's lawn. The memory of Bob brought a spark to Poirot's eyes. For the dog's silent testimony, the pristine ball, the locked shed, had been the linchpin of the case. "The dumb witness, Hastings," he murmured. He spoke louder than all the voices of Market Basing. At the station, a small crowd had gathered, drawn by the news of Miss Lawson's arrest and the restored will. Mrs. Jenkins, the innkeeper, bustled forward, her florid face alight with admiration. "Mr. Poirot, you've done wonders. The village won't stop talking about you, how you saw through that Lawson woman's tricks, and the family, they're ever so grateful." Poirot bowed, his hat tilting with practiced grace. "Merci, Madame Beau. The gratitude belongs to Mademoiselle Arundell, whose wisdom in writing to me, and to Ellen, whose loyalty sent the letter. Without them, the truth might have remained buried." Mrs. Jenkins nodded, her eyes gleaming with gossip. "And that will fancy Miss Emily hiding it away. Charles and Teresa are off to the solicitors now, planning their shares. Poor Bella, though she's still shaken, with that husband of hers glowering." Hastings, hoisting his bag, chuckled. "At least they've got something to squabble over now, instead of plotting." "You've given them a fresh start, Poirot." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A fresh start, yes, but the heart, it does not forget so easily. They will carry the shadow of this betrayal, even as they inherit." The train's whistle pierced the air, summoning them to the platform. As they boarded, Poirot glanced back. At Market Basing, its cottages fading into the dusk like a painting of a simpler time. The carriage was warm, its seats plush, and Hastings settled in with a contented sigh, pulling out a newspaper to pass the journey. Poirot, however, sat by the window, his fingers tracing the edge of Miss Arundel's letter, now safely tucked in his pocket. Its words, "I am not mad," echoed in his mind, a testament to a woman whose clarity had outlived her. "Hastings," he said, his voice low, "this case, it reminds us of the fragility of trust. Mademoiselle Arundell surrounded herself with those she loved, yet one among them wove a web of deceit. The arsenic, the stair-rod, the ball all so simple, yet so deadly." Hastings folded his paper, his brow furrowed. "Simple, yes, but you saw through it, Poirot? That business with the fern's pure genius? Who'd have thought to test the soil where she poured her tea?" Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his tone was modest. "The little gray cells, mon ami, they notice what others overlook. The ferns, wilting in their pots, cried out for justice, as did Bob, locked in his shed. The truth, it leaves its traces, like footprints in the sand." The train rattled through the countryside, its rhythm a soothing counterpoint to Poirot's reflections. He thought of the family Charles, with his reckless charm. Teresa, her defiance softened by gratitude. Bella, freed from suspicion but bound to her husband's temper. And Miss Lawson, whose desperate greed had turned devotion into destruction. The restored will had righted a wrong, but the scars of betrayal would linger as the fields gave way. To the outskirts of London, Hastings leaned forward, his voice cheerful. "What's next, Poirot? A bit of rest at Whitehaven Mansions? Or are you already sniffing out another mystery?" Poirot's smile was wistful. "Rest, Hastings. Perhaps a tisane, and a moment to reflect. But the world, it is full of secrets, waiting to be uncovered. The little gray cells, they do not sleep for long." The train pulled into Paddington, its steam curling into the evening air. Poirot and Hastings stepped onto the platform, the city's clamor a stark contrast to Market Basing's quiet. As they hailed a taxi, Bob's joyful bark echoed in Poirot's memory, a reminder of the innocent witness who had helped unmask a killer. "Adieu, Market Basing," he murmured, adjusting his hat. "Your secrets are no match for Hercule Poirot." The taxi rolled toward Whitehaven Mansions, and Poirot leaned back, his eyes half closed, already sifting through the patterns of human nature, ready for the next challenge to his formidable mind.